It is Friday, March 7th. I'm Bernice Hillier in Corner Brook, filling in for Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Tomorrow is International Women's Day, and we've dedicated our entire show to it this morning. We want to celebrate women for the everyday stuff they do, and we have a panel of women in studio, and we will take your calls. If you have a woman in your life who you want to show appreciation for and share it with our listeners, we would love to hear from you. Our lines are open today. What woman in your life do you appreciate? Give us a call and tell us about her. You can call us at 709-722-7111 or 1-800-563-8255. Now, you can also text us. We'd really like to hear your voice on the radio, though. Text us at 709-327-8206 during the show. That number again is 709-327-8206. You can send us an email as well, thesignal@cbc.ca. We would love to hear from you. Let's get right to our panel of women who have joined us in studio. And I want to say right off the top that we're not necessarily looking for women that you might immediately think of who have done some monumental thing in our province or country. We are talking today about all of the many little things that are actually really big and important that women do, like putting a hot meal on the table, making the holidays special, and being there in so many ways for others in the things that we might take for granted. So let's talk about the impact of women's daily contributions, whether that be at home, in the workplace, or in their communities. We're joined in our St. John's studio this afternoon by Vanessa Cardosa Whalen, and she is in our studio. I'm going to say hello to her now. Good afternoon, Vanessa.
Hello, good afternoon.
And it's so good to have you. We're going to have a chance to chat throughout the show, of course, but I want to introduce you to our listeners as a person who is a multidisciplinary artist and also the mother of three. So we will hear more from Vanessa as the show goes on. Kelly Earle is an author and also a mother of three who is married to a rotational worker. Good afternoon, Kelly.
Good afternoon, Bernice.
And Janet Kovich is in the studio. She has been a realtor and executive assistant for more than 20 years. And she says she's not a mom, but she's everyone's aunt. So we're going to say hello to Janet this afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Janet Kovich.
Good afternoon, Bernice.
And Merritt Ebsery is joining us in studio as well. She works at the Gender Studies Department at Memorial University and wrote a paper on women's rights and suffrage in Newfoundland and Labrador. So good afternoon, Merritt.
Hi there.
So we're going to be asking you to call in. We're going to be talking to our guests in studio. We've also had some emails come in. We'll share those with you as well. But now is a good time to get on the line and give us a call. 709-722-7111 or 1-800-563-8255. Well, let's just start maybe with all of our in-studio guests talking about the appreciation they feel for some women in their lives. Maybe, Kelly, we could start with you. Who comes to mind when you think of a woman who has meant a lot to you or who inspires you?
Definitely my mother. My mother is definitely an inspiration to me. My father and my mother were separated years ago, and she pretty much did everything on her own. She was mom and dad.
And Kelly, at the time, you know, I don't know how old you were at the time, but did you get a sense of how busy your mother was, how much responsibility she had, and all that she did to make things the way that they were so that you could enjoy them?
Oh, 1,000%. She did everything. I mean, yes, we still seen, my dad and stuff, but Mom was the one. Mom was the one we went to when we were upset. Mom was the one who was there when we were sick, cooked all our meals, kept a roof over our head, everything.
Kelly, say her name. I feel it's important to say the names of these women who inspire us.
Barbara Burns. And I know she's listening now on the radio. Hi, Mom.
Maybe with a tear in her eye.
Definitely.
Well, there you go. It's important to acknowledge the women in our lives. Absolutely. Janet Kovich, what about for you? Who comes to mind when you think of a woman who has meant a lot to you in your life, or who inspires you?
Well, obviously, my mother, like Kelly, I was raised by a single parent, and she was Aunt Barb to everybody, and everybody was treated the same. However, I've also had work mentors. I worked in government, and I worked with Betty Janes and Ollie Doyle, and they were a little bit older than I was, so they were kind of like work moms, and certainly mentored me through my early career. And then eventually I became the work mom. So, they're just these women in our lives who, you see them regularly, and they help you to grow and, I guess, excel at the things you do.
Janet, what's your mom's name?
Barbara Kovich.
Barbara Kovich.
She's on the West Coast in Steamboat Crossing.
Oh, wonderful. So maybe she's listening today as well.
It's possible.
Merritt, what about for you? Is there a woman who comes to mind immediately who means a lot to you? I know many of us could think of many women probably who've had an impact on us.
For sure. I mean, I think my answer is going to be pretty similar to the previous two. Yeah, my mom, for sure. Hi, Mom. She's listening today. But my mom has just done absolutely everything for me growing up. It's incredible to have a role model who can do really everything. There's nothing that I can think of that she can't do. So, I'm really grateful to have her in my life. Her name is Verena Ebsary.
Sorry, what was her first name?
Verena Ebsary.
Verena Ebsary. Well, she's listening too. All these moms are listening. All we have to do is get daughters on the radio, and then moms will tune in, right? What about for you, Vanessa Cardoso Whalen? When you think about a woman that you'd like to show appreciation to today, who comes to mind?
My name came to my mind when you said that, but today I will show appreciation for my mother-in-law here in Newfoundland, Labrador.
Oh, wonderful. That's lovely to hear.
Yeah, because I know my mom, of course, but my mom is not here to listen because she's in Brazil. So today, I appreciate my mother-in-law for sure.
And when you think about mother-in-laws, they do have they get a bit of a bad rap generally, right? Here in Newfoundland, I don't know if you've heard the term mother-in-law door. If someone's got a house and it doesn't have a front bridge or a front deck up to it, well, that could be the mother-in-law door. I've never felt that way about my mothers-in-law. But Vanessa, what is it that sets your mother-in-law apart that makes you want to recognize her today?
Yeah, we have the same thing in Brazil about mothers-in-law, by the way. But she's as a mom for me here. So when I need something, I can count on her with the kids. The kids is not so young anymore, but it's still when I need something. Nanny, maybe ask a nanny, or let's see what nanny's doing. And I think, she's wonderful, and I want to appreciate her.
And what's Nanny's name?
It's Edwina Kavina.
Edwina. Okay,
Yes.
well, wonderful to right off the top of the show be able to mention some of these very special women in our lives. I'm wondering if we could talk about, what women do. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we didn't want to necessarily recognize the women who might immediately come to mind who have been political leaders or, those award winners we hear about so often, but about the women and the load that they carry in their lives, in their families' lives, and in their communities. And I'm wondering, maybe, Merritt, if that's something that you could weigh in on, because I know you've done some research on this topic as well about how we don't always think fully about what's involved in being a woman and the role of women. And maybe we haven't always, throughout history, recognized that women, even though when, quote unquote, we didn't work outside the home, oftentimes we were leaders in our communities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's really what got me into the research in the first place, if I'm being honest with you. I remember sort of going through social studies textbooks and never really hearing a lot about the stories of women in a lot of my classes, and I did my entire schooling here in Newfoundland, so I wanted to learn more about their story. And of course, Newfoundland has had a very separate history from the rest of Canada, and then I became really interested in the suffrage movement. And these were everyday women who were going out and advocating for their right to vote. You know, they were women who had jobs, which I thought was really interesting as well. You know, their work wasn't really recognized, but they were doing a lot of fundraising. They were going out, they were collecting signatures for their ballots. A lot of this was work that for a very long time, you know, wasn't recognized. Also, you know, when I started looking into the history, I wanted to look at the beginning of what I could find. And I found records dating back from, 1611, when women were first brought to the province, women immigrants. And a lot of that was really interesting because they were brought over as a way to sort of control the population, right? So when they wanted more people on the island, they would send over more women. And I think that narrative that women were very connected to their family work really stuck. And that was something that we saw going on for a long time. So if you go forward to the 1800s, you can see sort of a lot of women who were still very connected to their families, and they were expected to sort of, quote unquote, as you said, stay at home, have children. But in reality, they were feeding, cleaning, and caring for themselves, their children, and their husbands at the same time. And I mean, that's an incredible amount of labor, right? Physically and emotionally that they were going through. And then, oftentimes when I present my work, I like to ask people, okay, so, considering these really strict sort of gendered boundaries that we would find in society, do you think that like men were at home all the time taking care of kids? And then the answer is no. And then I would say, well, do you think like women were outside doing stuff in the fishery? And the answer would be no. And then I'd say, well, in 1821, women made up 30% of the fishery. And in 1921, that was 40%. So, I mean, there we have it. Women were always, doing a lot of the labor and the grounding work in our province.
Incredible. Good to hear that, though. It's good to get that historical perspective. You've been hearing from our guests in studio this afternoon who have been telling you about the women in their lives. We want to hear from all of you, our listeners. Our lines are open, and we want to hear about the women in your life that you appreciate. Just tell us about someone who has been special to you and tell us why that person has made an impact on your life. You can give us a call at 709-722-7111 or 1-800-563-8255. You can also text to us, 709-327-8206, or send us an email, thesignal@cbc.ca. Kelly, we had just heard that historical perspective from Merritt about the role of women in our communities. And of course, we said you are married to a rotational worker. So, a lot of times I'm thinking that the roles of husband and wife in a household, leader, a male leader or female leader, or two different leaders, if someone's a rotational worker, it changes everything, I would imagine.
Oh, for sure.
So what is that like for you? Paint us a picture of what life is like for you as a woman and a leader in your family.
Well, our oldest is 10. So when we first decided we were going to start our family, we said, okay, well, I would stay home, and I was fine with that. And I mean, I was lucky I was able to do so. I mean, there's probably a lot of women who would have liked to have stayed home with their children, but financially, maybe they just, they couldn't at the time. So we decided that I would stay home and, raise the kids. So I actually went back to work last year. And I find now that luckily with my job, I can actually do my own schedule. I mean, I can do some work from home, or I can go into the office or something like that. But when my husband's away, I have to come home early from work because the kids get off the bus. So I have to be home to make sure there's somebody there for when they get off the bus. And my husband actually just left yesterday, so now I have to get back into the routine of taking care of the kids, get them to their activities. I mean, my husband is excellent. He's an awesome dad. He's hands-on. As soon as he gets home, he jumps right into where we are. So, it's just hard to have that part of the team gone, say, for 3 weeks, and then I have to do it all. So it's a little bit of pressure, but I mean, I am used to it after 10 years with the kids, but it does get tough at times. And that's when Barbara comes in handy, my dear mom. Like today now, one of my kids are homesick, so I had to call mom and be like, yeah, Mom, I have to be into CBC. So do you think you can come up and watch Dawson?
I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but it really does take a village. And obviously, it's great that Barbara is part of your village for sure. Janet, you said something earlier that I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to come back to it because I think it speaks to the role of women, or the perceived role of women in society. You said that you're a work mom now. You are the work mom, whereas you had relied on people like, I think, Betty and Ollie, you mentioned, who were the work moms in your life in the early years of your career. What does that even mean to be a work mom?
Well, it's kind of funny because you just don't even realize you're doing it until somebody gives you a mug at Christmas time and it says, "Don't mess with me, I'm the mom."
I love it.
And, I mean, everybody comes to you because, I'm 60, so in the workplace, I'm 60, and then we have, people who are in their 30s and 40s, and so I am old enough to be their mom. And something goes wrong, and they come to you and they tell you they need to talk or whatever, and I'm the one then too who also, it's somebody's birthday, so you pass the card around for everyone to sign, and little things like that are nurturing toward the other people in the office and making the office feel a little bit more comfortable for everybody. And it just comes naturally sometimes.
And Janet, would you say that's a privilege or a burden or a bit of both?
No, and I've never felt it was a burden. It was just something that I always did. And there were times when I thought, well, why are you coming to me with that? But it was just because they felt I was a person who they could trust, who they looked up to, who was a mentor or a friend. And it was just somebody who they knew they could come to without judgment, like their mom would. And, I've been that in most every role I've been in.
Wonderful. Vanessa, I want to ask you, you're a multidisciplinary artist, and I know that being an artist is a hard profession to pursue and to be able to engage in and to make a livelihood at doing. You're also a mom. How have you balanced all of those different roles? It's not as simple as going to work for a set period of time. The artists I know, it's on the go all the time. It's kind of 24/7.
Yeah, you should see my house. It is hard to balance everything because especially like working like from home sometimes because I don't have like a studio, so I create a lot at home. And then when I'm creating something and then somebody called me, "Mom, can you see that?" Or "Mom, can you do that?" And it's like, no, I'm working, but sometimes I stop and I'm going to do whatever I have to do with them. And sometimes I have to drive and just listen to Zoom calls, but I'm driving, but I multitask a lot. Yeah, that's how I balance, I think.
Vanessa, has it gotten easier to find a balance as your children have gotten older? Yes, because now like they don't really depend on me like for everything, like when they are like really is small, right? Now I have 19 years old that can drive the 15 years old for some things, and then that's very helpful. Gets easier, but it's still hard. We have someone on the line who wants to share a story about a woman who she feels deserves to be recognized. We have Patsy Yetman on the line now. Good afternoon to you, Patsy.
Good afternoon. Bernice, what a fabulous show. It could go on all afternoon, I believe.
Well, I think it could. I don't think CBC will allow us to continue and preempt national programming, but we certainly could. I'm sure we could fill a day's worth of programming at least. And I know that you had a chance to speak with our associate producer, Arlette Lazarenko, in preparation for this call because you sent us an email about someone you wanted to recognize, right?
Absolutely. Constable Georgina Short, she is with the RNC and has been for 37 years, which is a long career. And she is the ultimate volunteer. She has a great job, but she volunteers her time with so many different groups. And most recently, she was in the media with her two dogs, handsome Hershey and gorgeous Gladys. They volunteer at seniors' homes, at the Janeway, at palliative care, and now they're going to the airport to help people going on flights. But she is also a founding member of the Newfoundland and Labrador Police and Peace Officers Association, and the memorial on the grounds of Confederation Building, I think, touches the lives of all these individuals who have lost their lives in the line of duty, and now their families can go and see their names are there, and, you know, they can walk around this beautiful memorial to their loved ones. She's just a wonderful person.
And Constable Short, I mean, is one of those leaders, women leaders in our community that we may not necessarily recognize with an award or that sort of thing, but she's quietly doing all of this work and making an impact in so many ways in the community.
Absolutely, she is. Yes, she was involved with Eastern Health other than going with her dogs, and for many years, she was involved with Sunshine Dreams for Kids, a national organization that provides like maybe equipment or for children with disabilities that may not be able to afford them. You know, the family may not be able to afford them. This organization helps these children. So she's just one of these people who just wants to give to the community.
Wonderful. I'm glad that you called in to tell us about her today. Thanks so much, Patsy.
Thank you.
That's Patsy Yetman telling us about Constable Georgina Short of the RNC, who does a lot of volunteer work in many different ways in the community. I'm wondering, the women that we have in our studio today in St. John's, it's hard to find time for everything. And I'm just wondering, Kelly, if you can talk about how you prioritize, this season in your life as a mother of three. You really don't have a lot of time, I wouldn't think, to devote to other things outside the home.
Not really.
Well, you're a writer. We should talk about your book in a few moments from now. But how do you find that balance between feeling like I'm doing something more than picking up after my kids every day?
Well, while they're in school, I actually go into the office and work. So I find that's fine. And then I still have to be home by like 2:30. Because that's around the time they get home now, because they're in the younger grade, so they're home earlier now. So then I'll just finish the little bit of work I have left to do at home. Sometimes it's fine because they'll go outside or their friends will come in and they'll play downstairs. And other times I'm like, okay, Mommy's on a Zoom meeting. Can you be quiet for 5 minutes?
So, Kelly, what kind of conversations, I mean, I know your kids, you said your oldest is only 10. Mm-hmm. What kind of conversations do you have, though, about maybe the expectations they have of you, the expectations we all have of women in our lives?
Well, before I went back to work, it was just like, oh, Daddy's going away to work. And I remember our son said, he's like, yeah, Dad makes the money, Mom stays home. I said, oh. I said, and what does Mommy do? He goes, you just hang around the house. I'm like, oh, that would be so nice. Just hang around the house. No. And now that he's a little bit older, so he kind of understands, like I went back to work because I wanted to. I enjoyed my work that I did before. I was a financial advisor before I went on maternity leave. And then I stayed off for the 10 years. And I went back last February or March, and I love it. I still feel like I'm taking care of other families, but still taking care of my own.
That's wonderful. And I think it just speaks to the fact when kids are little, they only know really what they see.
Exactly.
And all he'd ever known was that you were home with him, mm-hmm. right? So, yeah. Janet, I want to ask you, you said you're not a mom, but you're everyone's aunt. And we talked about how you're a work mom. But you also... colloquially, you have run something that was colloquially known as Mama J's Boot Camp. So tell us about that.
Yeah, well, they didn't know what they were signing up for, bless their little hearts. I host international students on occasion since 2016, so I've had 2 sets of boys and 2 sets of girls from different places like Mexico, Brazil, Germany, Hong Kong, and host them. Actually, some of them have been for the whole school year from September to June. And I teach them how to do their chores. So some of them come from affluent families, and the mothers have maids or help in the home, and some of them don't. Some of them come from a family like, where the mom does everything. So I teach them how to clean their bathroom and make their beds and do the dishes, put the dishes in the dishwasher. And every Saturday morning is chores. We sweep and mop the floors. You make your bed. We clean the rooms. We clean the bathrooms. And by the time they go home, they have learned to do all these things. Now, some of them can continue to do them, and some others are like, yeah, no, I'm done. But I have had some moms come back to me and say, thank you so much for what you've done, because they now have an appreciation for what I do in the home.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I can see why they call it boot camp, though.
Yeah, they weren't expecting that when they arrived, but every one of them did it, and nobody complained, and they understood it was a part of being a part of a family. So that's what we do here. Everybody helps.
We're taking calls today. You can call in and talk to us about a woman in your life that you appreciate, you want to talk about, and tell us why she has made an impact on your life. You can give us a call at the studio here, in St. John's. The number to call is 1-800-563-8255, or you can call 709-722-7111. You can send us an email, thesignal@cbc.ca, or you can text to us, 709-327-8206. And we have had a couple of emails come in, and Arlette Lazarenko has one of those for us now. She's going to read.
Hi, Bernice. Yes, we got some emails from our listeners for International Women's Day. This is from Greg Froud. He writes, quote, "Dear The Signal, I would like to nominate my darling wife, Stephanie Neville. During the pandemic, I lost my kidney function and went on hemodialysis and was unable to work. Therefore, not only has she been our family's financial rock since the pandemic, but she also took the time to do renal compatibility testing, which was a success, and she was able to donate a kidney to me in May 2024. Just the two of us went to Halifax for the procedure. Afterwards, despite just giving a kidney, she visited me in the hospital every day, making sure that I was doing all right. She's the most remarkable wife a man could ask for, and this is why I would like to nominate her. All the best, Greg Froud." Thanks for this lovely email, Greg, and happy International Women's Day, Stephanie.
That's wonderful. Stephanie Neville, her contribution to her family and to a life-saving gift to her husband, Greg Froud. Just amazing. Wow. Vanessa, I wanted to talk to you because I know you have a special project that's underway. As a playwright, you have written a play now that talks about the role of women, but also some of the challenges that women face in their lives, and sometimes the challenges that they have in reaching out and getting the help that they might need. So I wonder if you could tell us about that project.
Yes, this is a new play I'm writing. It's still a work in progress. It's called About Time. It's the focus, not the focus, but I'm dealing in the play, I'm dealing with women that dealing with mental health and how balance and how everyday life and everything else women do gets very difficult and hard when you are dealing with mental health. So the project, like I said, it's a work in progress. It's a reading of the play tonight. I have like 2 actors on stage and other 2 reading other voices that appear on the play. So I'm talking with a lot of women about this, about the balance, about everything, everyday lives, and how they are doing with the expectations that society put on us. And this, like, the ask for help, it's a thing. Like, we don't want to ask for help sometimes because of the stigma, or we don't want to talk about because how people are going to think, like, that I'm not able to do something. Or even like in a workplace, like sometimes we don't want to say that we cannot do something. So yeah, it's been very helpful for me to talk with those women, so I can create this display. But it's been very hard to see how like to see that we still get a lot of fear to ask for help.
Merritt, I want to bring you into the conversation on a point that was mentioned to us by Janet about this whole idea of, women having some sort of natural, innate empathy that makes them well suited for a specific role, whether it's in their workplace or their home or their community. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that sense of maybe social duty, I think you refer to it as, that women may feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was really, really prevalent with all of this historical work that I was talking about earlier. I think that there is a lot of merit in the work that people do. And especially women, all of this work that we're talking about is very, very, emotionally taxing work, right? It's difficult. And I think what is really important to remember here is that while women have historically taken on a lot of these roles and continue to too, caring is not something that's just sort of exclusive to women. Men have the capability to do that too. Growing up, I had a stay-at-home father, and I'm so grateful for, everything that he was able to provide for us too. It's rare. It's not something that you see so much around here for sure. But I think it really speaks to the ability that people can do this. And in general, all people, I think, have the capability to take on these roles. What I think needs to be recognized, though, is that these caring roles are really, really important for our society. And they have been for a really, really long time. So what we need to do is we need to, I think, be able to give more recognition to these roles on days like International Women's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, all days of the year, I think, not necessarily just holidays. We need to consider this as something that really needs to be recognized. And in some ways, I think what can be done about that is to be giving, more funding to a lot of the caring roles that we have in society that aren't necessarily paid as much as certain other roles. So yeah.
That's really helpful, though, that for you to talk about that, because I think a lot of times women just keep quiet about the role that they play. They know themselves what they do, but we're not always championing the fact that women make these contributions way above and beyond probably what most people in society even think about on a day-to-day basis, because I think maybe sometimes we smooth things over so much that people don't even realize all the many things that the women in our communities do. We have another caller on the line, and I really appreciate Melanie standing by. We've got Melanie Irvin on the line to talk to us. Good afternoon, Melanie.
Hello.
Melanie, what do you have to share? I know you've called in because you wanted to tell us about someone special.
Yeah, so I'd like to recognize Angus, who is a woman who works as a cashier at Sobeys on Mary Meeting Road. I've lived in the downtown and Rabbittown area for the past 15 years, so I've been a frequent shopper there. And Angus has always stood out for her kindness and warmth. I find she greets everyone with a smile and takes a genuine interest in everyone's lives and makes every visit feel personable. She goes out of her way to get to know the regular shoppers, remembering details about their lives and often making them feel valued. She has a way of brightening your day, whether through a friendly chat or a simple gesture or just her presence. And so I just would like to give a shout out to Agnes for her small acts of kindness that always make you feel at home.
And Melanie, you've known Agnes for many years. I mean, not necessarily personally, but through her work there at the Sobeys on Mary Meeting Road, right?
Yes. No, she's definitely a staple at Mary Meeting.
And you were, I understand, a student when you first met Agnes, and I'm just wondering what that was like for you to have that person friendly. The university years can be very overwhelming. You're going to get your groceries. Maybe it's the first time you've had to prepare meals for yourself, and then you're greeted by this very friendly and helpful person.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was absolutely great. And now I have 2 young children, and throughout my pregnancy and now as the children are growing up, she always makes a point of saying hi to them or asking about them, and it just means a lot.
I love that you chose her to celebrate on International Women's Day. Thanks so much, Melanie.
Yes, thank you.
That's Melanie Irvin calling in about Agnes, who works at Sobeys on Merry Meeting Road. How wonderful to hear what a difference Agnes is making in people's lives. I'm sure that Melanie's not the only person who feels that way. I want to come to Kelly because I am just getting a note to say that Kelly, who is an author, we've said her book is called Rig Wives. I believe I have that right. Kelly, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
But I understand you've brought a couple of copies of your book to give away to someone who might call in or email or text us today.
I did.
So just give people a sense of this book and why you chose to write it and whose stories you're telling.
It's basically just about all the women who do have husbands that are rotational workers and how they feel while their husbands are away, or, you know, what's on their plate when they're away. And I find it myself very stressful. Like, I know, you know, different times when it's really windy in town, like this morning, I was a little nervous because, you know, the weather isn't great out there right now, and I know he's out there right now. So I'm kind of like, okay, he's okay. So,
you have to remind yourself.
I do. And then I have other rig wife moms that are, you know, that are my friends and stuff. So we kind of just chat back and forth to each other because our husbands are usually working on the same shift. So we kind of keep in touch, well, all the time.
Kelly, what has been the response of people to the book Rig Wives since it was released?
I've gotten some emails different times and even just messages through Instagram and everything. And they just say how they can relate to the book, and they tell me their story, like their husband may be a rotational worker on a boat. So they're probably gone 6 weeks as opposed to 3 weeks, which is what my husband has gone for. Now, I mean, I know there's so many people, like my cousin, her husband is in the Navy. So he's gone for months at a time. So it's not really complaining. It's just my stories. And there's other women in the story as well that, you know, they're on the same page as me kind of thing. And it's not like we're looking for pity. We're just saying, you know, like it's rough. Like it's a rough life. And people think, oh, the offshore, what a glamorous job. No, it's not glamorous. It's more of a nightmare, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a worry, and
it is,
and you have your partner away from you for sure. Merritt, I wonder, in your research, have you come across women, you know, who were left as widows, as mothers trying to raise children because their husbands were doing very dangerous work? I mean, before the offshore and even now, the fishery is not a safe industry necessarily. And I'm not saying that there's anything in terms of workplace safety that could be done differently, but it's just by virtue of being on the North Atlantic. It is a dangerous profession to be engaged in. So whether it's a woman or a man who's out there in a fishing boat, for generations, we know probably women in our lives who've lost a loved one and then had to raise a family by themselves.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely something that I want to look more into in my research. A lot of what I've looked at so far has been sort of women's, you know, political history in the province. But something that really stuck out to me about what was just said was also that, you know, a lot of times the stories of women who are at home aren't told. And I think that is what is really, really important. And that's what drives me to keep researching my work too, because like I said previously, I hadn't heard anything about it. I wanted to find out more about their history because, you know, when society can be pretty patriarchal, a lot of the other histories and stories are kind of left behind. So I just want to commend the work that you're doing and really say that it's very, very important and it's definitely going to make a mark for sure.
Thank you.
And Merritt, you're working on a project now called Rabble Rousers. Tell us what that is.
Absolutely. So Rabble Rousers is basically commemoration of the 100th anniversary of Memorial University, and we're doing it sort of along with the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage in the province. So both are happening this year, and we're just doing a series of events. So far with Rabble Rousers, we've had multiple speaking events. We have lectures that are open to the public. A lot of this is on our Facebook page, the Department of Gender Studies. But yeah, it's a lot of exciting events coming up. We have definitely more in April when we'll be launching our room. But right now at the Arts and Culture Center Library, so the AC Hunter Library, we have sort of a space there that's right now in commemoration of the Ladies Reading Room. So sort of a satellite space for what we're creating, and hopefully will open in April with rabble rousers.
Okay, well, you'll have to tell us more about that for sure. And of course, Merritt is, a young woman who's now an intern at the Memorial University Gender Studies Department. Janet, you were mentioning that you are later on in your career and you're looked to as the work mom right now. I'm just wondering if you can see any generational differences in how, women's roles are perceived in the workplace, because you've been in the workforce now as a realtor and executive assistant for more than 20 years. I'm sure you have seen some changes, whether they are for the good or not. It remains to be seen.
Yeah, there have been a lot of changes since I've been in work, because we didn't even have the internet when I started. But I do see. I feel like the older ladies in the workplace are usually the ones who are the ones that people go to and such. But the younger ladies in the workplace also do, I think, a little bit more of the nurturing, the kindness, the reaching out to people when they think they're in trouble. They're going to put themselves out there a little bit more, I think, than the males in the company. Just by virtue, I guess, of the way we were all raised. We were raised as women, and we were raised to be that person in our families. So I just feel like, even though men are certainly capable of empathy and whatnot, I feel like the women are the ones who usually make the move first.
And Janet, we just heard from Vanessa about the project that she's working on that delves into some of the things dealing with women and mental health and that kind of, should I ask for help, the stigma of asking for help. How have you seen that change? Are we more open about that than we were 20 years ago?
We're much more open about that now. We're also much more open about harassment in the workplace and that kind of stuff, because I can tell you in the 80s, and even the early 90s, when you worked in an office, you were not, you were more likely to be harassed than you are now. There are, it's very clear now that these things are not acceptable anymore. And if somebody needs help, they are more likely to step up now, I believe.
We do have another email that's come in, and so we'll go to Arlette now to read that one for us.
Bernice, we got an email from Caroline Godin. She says, I would like to celebrate my friend Mary Sexton on Women's Day. She has been a tireless leader in the film and television industry and has mentored many people in this industry. She was recognized with the Trailblazer Award at the 2024 St. John's Women's International Films Festival. Her film Maudie won accolades worldwide, and she has spearheaded and worked on countless productions in Newfoundland and Labrador. She has also been a supporter to many community organizations, including the Tommy Sexton Center. And her most recent film production, Skeet, shone a light on a new immigration population here in St. John's. But mostly, she is an incredible friend, generous and kind to a fault with her time and her support, always there when you need her, always up for a bit of fun, and a patriotic Newfoundlander and Labradorian through and through. Thank you so much for this, Caroline, and happy International Women's Day for both of you.
And Arlette, thanks very much for reading that email we received from Caroline. Interesting there, that conversation about being a friend, and it kind of comes back to what Kelly was talking about all those rig wives who support each other and probably talk each other down at times when the winds are high and they're worried about their partners at sea. Kelly, how important has the friendship, the bond with other women been throughout your life?
Oh, very important. They are what you call my village. So we stay in contact a lot. We get together a lot. Our kids are friends. So, to me, they're like my rock most days when our husbands are gone, and we just kind of lean on each other. I find it comforting.
And I think we need to celebrate that kinship, that connection that we have with other women and celebrate each other. I'm wondering, Vanessa, if you can talk about, the community that you found here in terms of the people who support you and how you have contributed to what, maybe they are looking for, but also that they've helped you.
Yes, it's a long list, but I will be for the Women Work Festival that's happening this week.
Right.
That's I always say it's my it's my anniversary with a lot of the women here in arts, especially in the theater. That in the festival was where I found the support, like from Ruth Lawrence and Lois Brown and Stacey Garden and a bunch of others that I'm not going to name everybody because, yes, it's a big list. And I always found support to create. And this festival it's so important because it's highlighting women's work, not in the plays, not in the theater, but also in open acts. We always have open acts from musicians. And this year we're going to have like a fair with some products to support local women here in our province. And I'm very privileged to be in this community and be inspired and be able to inspire some people too. Yesterday, somebody told me that by reading my play, she's now inspired to write as well. So that's like it's very like heartfelt for me.
That's amazing. And we should tell people they can get all the details about the Women's Work Festival online. The website has a full schedule of events, womensworkfestival.ca. And this is the 19th year for that festival. Vanessa, I don't know how many years out of that you've been involved.
Yes, it's 19 years. I'm involved since I came here 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yes. I was like, I had a reading somebody. First, I was like reading somebody's play, and then after I was involved. And now I'm on a board, and I had my first play on a festival, and the play was published last year. The name of the play is Happy Anniversary. In this play, I talk about gender-based violence. So yeah, it's a very important festival. It's like many of the plays that were in the festival was published or produced after. I don't have the numbers here. I should, but I don't. But yes, if you can check the site, we still have some activities. Tonight is the reading for my play and also Elena Elumi play. And tomorrow we have more readings and to Sunday.
Wonderful. So womensworkfestival.ca if you want to get all the details and you can register there for any of the events. Janet, what kind of responsibility do you feel to be a role model for women in your workplace? Or do you feel that you're living out your life at this point and you're doing the good work that you do?
I guess I've always been taught to give back. It's just been the way I was raised. My mother, my grandmother, on my dad's side, we were just always people who did what we could for other people. And I kind of feel like that's just who I am, basically. I try to do the best I can. Sometimes I fall short. Hey, you know what? I'm just like everybody else. I'm doing the best I can, but I always try to be someone that you can turn to if you need something. And as an executive assistant, I usually have someone who can help. Like I usually have a Rolodex, or they don't call it that anymore, but I have a Rolodex full of people. So usually if you have an issue, I can help you with it. And it's just who I was raised to be.
Merritt, before we're getting into the last few minutes of our program now, but I want to highlight the fact, and this surprised me, I only learned this week. I've always heard 1918 is when Canadian women received the right to vote. However, Newfoundland and Labrador, of course, wasn't a part of Canada at that time. So Merritt, talk a little bit about the fact that the 100th anniversary of women in this province receiving the right to vote is actually coming up next month.
Yeah, exactly. So the women's suffrage movement here sort of happened in two different phases. So there was a movement in the 1890s that was unfortunately unsuccessful, and then again in the 1920s. And 1925 was when they eventually gained the right to vote. It was April 21st, I believe. I think so. Anyway, they gained it. But what happened then was that women could still only vote at the age of 25, whereas men could vote at the age of 21. And, a lot of the discussions that were going around surrounding suffrage at that point, and something that, I've argued in my research, was that in a lot of these arguments, women were really advocating for their position in the House, and that being really important because they've always had a role in society. I talked about women being involved in the fishery. They were never economically compensated for any of that. So, really trying to get the vote was so important for them. And then for that to be met with a lot of resistance was also, I can imagine, really, really difficult. And then, of course, the other issue was that it was taxing when that wouldn't happen. And then, when you got the right to vote, you were considered in a lot of places, or in Newfoundland specifically, they were looking to what was going on around the British Empire. And so women all over the British Empire had the right to vote, except for Newfoundland and South Africa. So a big argument was that, okay, we need to give our women the right to vote because what makes them unequal to any other woman around the British Empire, not necessarily the men. And that's something that I think was still really prevalent in society. So even after women gained the right to vote, it wasn't necessarily equal right away. Divorce law only came into place in 1968, and there were still a lot of inequalities that women had in society. Yeah.
Wow. They blazed the trail for all of us, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
But it's hard to think about that we were later than the rest of the country, of course, that we later joined, but that the restrictions were still very much there in terms of age restrictions on how old a woman had to be before she was deemed to be worthy of having the right to vote. Just incredible to think about now in 2025. Kelly, I wonder if we can come to you for a final word about, I guess, how you feel we should better recognize, or how we can better recognize women for all of the many things they do in our society.
I'm not really sure.
Do you feel appreciated in, your community and your family in the work that you do?
I do. Yes, I do. And I think we just need to take a look at everything that women do. And I mean, right now I'm working in a male-dominant industry, but there's a lot of females in my office that are at the top right now. So, I'm proud to say that I think women are coming a long way, really, and they're going to be at the top.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And celebrating and talking about women as we are here today, I think that's a great thing for sure.
Yes, for sure.
Janet, what about for you? Is there something you can think of that, maybe we could do this a little better and people would understand how very important women are, especially in the invisible work that they often do?
Well, I think that, to be honest with you, I just think that we need to start when children are small and explain to them, just because your mom's home doesn't mean she doesn't work. Well, why don't you help with the laundry so you can learn some of what mommy does? And then we raise children and families who appreciate them, what their mother does for them every day, and they understand that. And then when they go to work, they understand the behind the scenes, that someone went and put cupcakes in the kitchen and, somebody else made sure there was coffee. And, I think it starts actually probably with us to raise these children to understand how valuable their mother is and to teach them, these are the things that your mom does and you should be a part of it and you should understand so that, when you grow up to be an adult, you're going to be a well-rounded adult.
I love that. Merritt, what about for you? What would you say is there something we can do differently, or are we on the right path?
I think moments like these when we commemorate the work that women do is really, really important. But also, I completely agree. I think that there needs to be more value in these caretaking positions, and we need to recognize that as a society. And I think that means starting to share these little duties at home that aren't so little. So, for example, doing the cooking and cleaning and all of these things, if you're able to share that, or if somebody else can do some of that work too, I think that can be really, really helpful in saying that, this isn't only something that women have to do. Like, it's not a duty. And I think we need to get away from framing these things as sort of duties. Yeah.
Well, we're going to leave it there, and I want to thank all four of you for being in studio with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Happy International Women's Day to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernice.
We've been speaking with Vanessa Cardosa Whalen. She's a multidisciplinary artist. We wish her well at the Women's Work Festival. Her reading of her play is on tonight. Kelly Earle is an author and a mother of three, and she's the author of Rig Wives. Janet Kovich is an executive assistant and realtor at a real estate company. She's been working in that field, and she's everyone's aunt, now ours as well, Aunt Janet. And Merit Ebsari has been joining us. She is an intern at the Gender Studies Department at Memorial University and has written extensively about women's rights and suffrage in Newfoundland and Labrador. Well, that is all the time we have for today. If you missed the conversation, you can re-listen to it on our CBC Listen app or our YouTube channel as well at CBC Newfoundland and Labrador. We would love to hear from you if you want to get in touch and let us know what you've thought of the program today. Have a great day, everyone.